Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and today it's my New Year's edition of my mock draft. You know, it's been a while since I did one. I pissed off a lot of Bears fans with that trade. Well, guess what, guys? Today, you get to keep Justin Fields for this mock draft because, as you saw in the title, this is Washington Commanders going absolutely all in on changing everything with their franchise. They're going to have a new head coach. They're going to have a new offensive coordinator probably. They're going to have a whole new front office. From the looks of it, the whole thing's going to get blown up. And breaking news, apparently Russell Wilson's on his way out as well. So we're going to address what's going on in Denver. But let's start with the Washington Commanders. The obvious move is for them to make a trade up to number 1, with the Bears looking to get out of number 1. And they will do that by trading the number 3 overall pick and their first second round pick, which I believe is 36 right now, and a second round pick in 2025 to move up to 1 for the Bears. The Bears recoup the second round pick that they actually traded to Washington for Montez Sweat. And then they get an extra second round pick next year so they can continue to get high level draft capital to keep rebuilding that team around there. Though this does put it in a position where this is Justin Fields' last chance. This is his last chance. There are some little pieces on the defense that I think that the Bears need to address. I think that bringing in veterans on the offensive side of the ball is the best way to help Justin Fields in the immediate future. So I think that we'll see them probably do that, use their cap space to do that. They've done a pretty good job of spending cap space on the defensive side of the ball last year and now with Montez Sweat. So I could see them maybe adding one other veteran player on the defense, but I think that they can start investing in some of the rookie contracts and develop some guys on the defense of side of the ball, while then now spending some more money on the offensive side of the ball. They're probably going to need another receiver. It would be nice to get another veteran out there for Justin Fields as well. Maybe sign another offensive lineman. I think that could be a possibility as well. One of the guard positions, perhaps at center, depending on what they do with Cody Whitehair. And then Tevin Jenkins. Don't know what's going to happen there. It'd be nice if they kept him as well. He's started to sort of figure it out, sort of like the slow burn that is Tevin Jenkins in his development. Maybe add a running back in the backfield. There's going to be some high-level free agency, high-level free agent running backs, though they've gotten some good production out of some of the lower-end guys like Dante Foreman and Khalil Herbert. But, I mean, it looks like Saquon Barkley might be a viable option for them as well, so maybe they want to spend $10, $11 million at that to really help out Justin Fields and maybe build the offense the way that we see in Baltimore right now, which has yielded a ton of success as Baltimore currently is the number 1 team in the NFL. But now moving on to the Denver Broncos. It was announced that Russell Wilson's benched now for the rest of the year. Pretty much they're punting any opportunity they might have had to have gotten to the playoffs to play Jarrett Stidham. And Russell Wilson he is expecting to be cut in March. It'll probably be with a June 1st designation to help lower the cap hit. But it does put Denver in a position where they're going to need a quarterback. I do expect Russell Wilson to probably end up on a team like Atlanta, where he would be considered an upgrade for them and almost like a low-risk signing because they do have so much cap room to work with. And then they can use their high draft capital instead of getting a rookie quarterback, maybe continue to build some of the younger talent around there. And then if Russell Wilson doesn't work out, then they'll be in a position where they'll have a lot of talent ready to insert a quarterback into that situation. And with that division really so up in the air, still barring some type of gigantic big-time move by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the offseason, really the only team that's in a position right now to do so, because the Saints' salary cap stuff is really off the walls. You don't really know what their coaching staff is going to look like, what their quarterback situation is going to be. So they're really in a position now where maybe they could feel like adding a guy like Russell Wilson is an immediate upgrade to the quarterback room. He is, especially the way he's been playing in the second half of the season in Denver. So maybe mixing him in there with Tyler Algier, with Cordell Patterson, with Bijan Robinson, with Drake London, with Kyle Pitts, he can maybe get a little bit more out of them. And I can see Atlanta really deciding that that's the case and the best case for their franchise. I don't really see a veteran in their future just because of their salary cap situation. So I don't expect to see maybe a Kirk Cousins go there. I think Kirk Cousins is much more likely to end up at a team like Las Vegas, depending on who their offensive coordinator becomes. I do expect their head coach to be Antonio Pierce next year. But with all that said, let's roll in to the actual mock draft itself. First 32 picks of the mock draft. Let's get to it right now. So with that trade up, it's pretty obvious what these first 2 picks are going to look like as it stands. Caleb Williams goes number 1. Marvin Harrison Jr. goes number 2. Washington gets their franchise quarterback, a guy that they can really promote. I think that that's going to be really important to this organization as well, is the ability to put a guy on a poster that's really marketable, and there really isn't a more marketable quarterback right now than Caleb Williams. He's been a big deal in the college game for a long time. I think he's got the personality to be somebody who they can really parade out there and use to completely rebrand this organization, which seems to be the goal. And I think you can pair him up with a really, really strong new offensive-minded head coach. And then that's sort of the future of your team with Terry McLaurin there, with Jahan Dotson there. I think you got a decent running game with Brian Robinson, and you can still build your offensive line in free agency through getting some draft picks here. You still have another 2nd-round pick. You have an extra 3rd-round pick also for the Chase Young trade. So you can make a couple of moves here to maybe shift the entire aura of this team. I think Jonathan Allen being on the trade block could be a possibility as well. You can maybe recoup another 3rd-round pick for Jonathan Allen, maybe even a 2nd-round pick, depending on who you're throwing this value at. You saw Seattle use a 2nd-round pick for Leonard Williams. I think you could probably get a 2nd-round pick for a team that maybe misses out on a Johnny Newton in this draft, that may be looking for a true 3-down interior guy. Marvin Harrison, I think, is very self-explanatory. Here's the Bears, and they trade back. They get Liatu Latu, the edge at UCLA. There's have been concerns about his injuries, but I think he's shown that he is every bit the talent that he's been promoted as. You've seen him sort of go up and down draft boards a bit. I think he's going to be somebody who, because he's going to wow people at the pro day, probably at the combine as well, that he's going to find himself jumping up into this top 5 spot. And I think the Bears would really love to bring him in the situation, and it's going to put him in a great position to succeed early on too, with Montez Sweat on the other side. And now you've got 2 really great edge rushers on this roster to really help along this defense, and the offense is still pretty damn functional, even though you are putting yourself in a pretty must-win situation for Justin Fields for sure now. You're still in a great spot. I think you can add some veteran talent on the defensive side on the offensive side of the ball, and now start investing in some of these rookie contracts here. You all see there the number 8 pick, the pick that the Bears actually own for themselves. Kool-Aid McKinstry comes into this team. Jalen Johnson, even if they do bring him back, I still think you can afford to add another corner here. You can kick Kyler Gordon to maybe more of a safety role with Jaquan Brisker, and Eddie Jackson maybe is the odd man out here, or maybe Jalen Johnson just wants out of Chicago, doesn't love the situation there. He's having a great year. He can afford to make a lot of money and break the bank for himself, perhaps somewhere else. You see Drake May, the 2nd quarterback there to the Patriots. I think it's pretty obvious the Patriots are taking whatever top quarterbacks there. I don't anticipate anyone leapfrogging them and them getting stuck with quarterback 3. 2 pass catchers here of different types. The New York Giants, my New York Giants, getting Malik Neighbors. This guy can come in and basically be their Stephon Diggs, I would say, of this offense. Get a guy number 1, and then Jalen Hyatt sort of started to come along a bit, and then you're in a position where it's like, who's your quarterback? I guess Daniel Jones gets 1 more year. Maybe it was a little unfair this year. He played almost all of his games without Andrew Thomas, Barkley, questionable. Darren Waller, questionable. The offensive line just wasn't ready. They need some more veterans there. Maybe this is just sort of that throw out, burn the tape, and forget that it ever happened type of a deal and try again. Brock Bowers going to the Chargers. They're going to have a new head coach. There's rumors it's going to be Bill Belichick. So why wouldn't Bill Belichick get himself his Rob Gronkowski tight end 1 to add to this weapons group and really just go all in with Justin Herbert here and fill the void on this in this offense, really. I mean, could you add some more power in the backfield? Perhaps, but you can probably do that in later rounds. Obviously, you can do that in free agency as well. You know, you get a healthy offensive line. You can add a veteran. You can draft maybe a guy in the second, third round that can fill some holes there as well. And just, you know, you get a guy like Brock Bowers who can be a really high-end across the board. I said Gronk. I probably should have said George Kittle with his just willingness to be a true three-down tight end. And he's going to always give you the effort, you know, the foot injury aside. And then Joe Alt to the Titans. Peter Skoronski's done a really good job throughout as the year's gone on. I do like the idea of having him, though, probably stay at guard. That looked to be probably where he's going to be best suited. But then you get Joe Alt who can come play tackle right next to him. And then that's, you know, keep getting a strong offensive line and let Will Levis continue to come along, who came in, showed flashes right away, and we'll see how that continues throughout his career. Now let's address the Denver Broncos and, you know, skip over a couple picks here. We'll get back to them, but I have them taking Michael Penix Jr. over Jaden Daniels, who goes the very next pick to the Minnesota Vikings. Now, I know Jaden Daniels is the Heisman Trophy winner and everything like that, but I think the idea that Sean Payton brings in a much more polished, well-rounded quarterback who, frankly, he probably doesn't have to worry about the development woes as much early on in the career. Maybe Jaden Daniels has a higher ceiling because of the age thing, but I think that Michael Penix can work his way into being functional in this offense the same way you saw with Drew Brees. What's the wide receiver room going to look like? Maybe because they don't have a second round pick, they work away to get Jerry Jeudy to be worth maybe an early third round pick. And then if they don't love this quarterback situation, maybe they like a J.J. McCarthy. Maybe they like Quinn Ewers. And then they maybe package 2 third-round picks to move up into the second round to take one of those guys. I think that could be a possibility as well. But I think that for the sake of this video and assuming that they're ready to swing and that they want to plug in a quarterback, that Sean Payton must see that there might be 1 or 2 rookies in particular in this class that he feels he can plug in and get a lot of success out of and get some consistent play, who can run the offense the way it needs to get run for this team to have success. I think that Michael Penix is probably the best option for that. And then there's Minnesota. They just grab Jaden Daniels, reset the quarterback room for themselves. And you're plugging Jaden Daniels also into that 49ers, you know, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan type of offense that's very quarterback friendly right out the gate. We see it with Brock Purdy. We saw it with CJ Stroud in Houston. You saw it with Matthew Stafford right away, even though Matthew Stafford was already a really good player. But you see immediate success for quarterbacks in that. Now, how Jaden Daniels then develops and opens up the playbook a lot more as season goes on. He's going to be given every opportunity to do that with Hawkinson, with Justin Jefferson, with Jordan Addison. KJ Osborne shown that he can be a pretty damn good receiver too, especially in a wide receiver 3 role in that offense. You know, Brian O'Neill's had a great year as a tackle. You have Christian Darrisaw, so you're really plugging in Jaden Daniels into a great situation, and because of his athleticism, he can also extend plays in situations where the offensive line may not be at its best. And I think that that's something that the Vikings, particularly in the coaching staff, would love to have. Looking at some run there of offensive linemen, Olu Fashanu and J.C. Latham going to the Packers and the Raiders. I like the idea of that being the case there. You got back-to-back edge rushers, Dallas Turner and Jared Verse, both going to the NFC South. This is where I'm looking at a team like Atlanta and going, this is why you can maybe get Russell Wilson, and then you can just take like the best edge rusher on the board and then immediately improve your defense and maybe focus on that and just plug a guy like Russell Wilson in on a 2-year deal. You know, you got the cap space to do it. You can lure him in there, maybe, make him feel good about himself, make him feel a little bit better than maybe what he is, but it's still an upgrade for you guys. Jared Verse, I think you plug him in, same thing. You don't know how much longer you got Cameron Jordan for. Peyton Turner, hasn't been like this super high-end edge guy either. You drafted Isaiah Foskey last year, so maybe you just keep adding to that front 4, especially because there's such high-level contracts in there, and you're going to have to figure out a way to create cap space every year like New Orleans has to. I like the idea of Rome Odunze going to the Jets, that the Jets just taking the best weapon on the board, whether it be Odunze or whether it be Brock Bowers, if Brock Bowers does fall to this spot. Because you got to think about, okay, they need offensive line, but when you plug in a rookie offensive lineman, a lot of the times they're not going to be that good early on in their career. Unless you're drafting Tristan Wirfs, you're going to get a lot of growing pains out of these offensive linemen. We saw it with Andrew Thomas. We saw it with Christian Darrisaw. And then after the year after that, and the year after that, they became much better players. But you don't really have that much time with Aaron Rodgers, so maybe you spend that money on more of a veteran, and you get him a great weapon to work with, who also, unlike the time in Green Bay when they drafted Watson and Doubs, he doesn't have to make Odunze the number one receiver on the team. He's already got that in Garrett Wilson. He's already got another receiver on there that he really likes to play with, really trusts in Allen Lazard. So Odunze is coming in as a high ceiling talent, a rookie full of piss and vinegar, and he's going to be ready to come out and play. And you're getting a high level talent who really doesn't have to have the pressure of performing like a wide receiver 1, even really like a wide receiver 2, and it really upgrades that wide receiver room for you and provides a lot more depth to it than what they have right now. You look at the Jets wide receiver room as it stands right now, there's not a lot there. You were expecting Aaron Rodgers was going to make a lot out of that, especially with guys like Allen Lazard and Randall Cobb, and with him not there, you really saw that it's just Garrett Wilson. Now with Rodgers in there, that obviously upgrades Allen Lazard, but you want to give him something else to work with as well. And then you got the Arizona Cardinals with their second first-round pick. This one they got, this is from Houston, right? They get Nate Wiggins, cornerback out of Clemson. So they get Marvin Harrison. They get Nate Wiggins, really helping the passing game on both sides of the ball, where they really do need some assistance. Right here, we got a couple wide receivers coming off in this next group of 8. We'll start with Keon Coleman going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I've kind of been saying it that Deontay Johnson and George Pickens are not long for this world in Pittsburgh. Not both of them at the same time. I think that the Steelers culture, the Tomlin culture, just doesn't tolerate what they've been showing this season. The selfishness, the unwillingness to put in those big effort plays to benefit the team. Not blocking inside the 5-yard line to get your running back into the end zone in a big situation. And I do think George Pickens is the odd one out here, that they'll move on from him in this offseason in one way, shape, or form, whether they trade him for a late round pick or whether they just flat out cut him. I think because, Deontay Johnson, his reputation, I think, is a lot better. I think the way that he has fit into the Steelers culture is more proven. This seems to be more of a, an outlier for him. George Pickens came into this with the expectations of maybe he's going to have some attitude problems. That's why he wasn't a first round pick to begin with. And I think if you're going to pick and choose someone, you're going to pair up Deontay Johnson. Then you pair him up with Keon Coleman, who's a big body wide receiver, who hopefully you can get what you're hoping to get from Chase Claypool and George Pickens out of him. And also when you look at a guy like George Pickens not making those effort plays, you're kind of looking at him like, what have you done in this league that has earned you the right to make these types of business decisions? You're not exactly lighting the world on fire like a DK Metcalf, like a Mike Evans, like, guys like that. Which brings me, speaking of Mike Evans, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Emeka Egbuka, who's kind of fallen out of favor, it seems, with the draft community. I still think he could be a good wide receiver talent here, and I got him going to Tampa. Do they keep Mike Evans and Chris Godwin? I don't know. I think maybe that they're looking at their team right now and going like, we could. I think they probably will make the playoffs as the 4 seed. They're going to get stuck playing Dallas or Philadelphia, which is probably a first round exit. But there's also that thing where it's like, just get in. If you can get in, you have a chance. Like, so many of these dark horse teams have gone on runs in the playoffs that people weren't expecting and even won the Super Bowl. So I think that they can look at it and they can say, Baker's playing really well in this offense. Much better than people expected. Our defense is playing much better than people expected. We're getting a lot better play out of our offensive line than maybe we expected. We could just use a couple more like tried and true weapons. I think Egbuka would fit in even if they do keep Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I think he'd fit in pretty damn well and have a role really carved out for himself there. We're looking at edge rushers here, defensive linemen. Again, Chop Robinson going to the Colts. I think that's a dream situation for the Colts to have him drop. Same thing with Braylon Trice to the Rams. I think they're really going to be just looking at grabbing a top defensive player. And then the Jags have Johnny Newton really fall into their laps here. I think they're a team where that's sitting where they are. Just take the best defensive lineman on the board, whether he's an edge, whether he's an interior guy. And I think that getting Johnny Newton on this team really does improve that interior and will help them collapse the pockets and all that. Some defensive backs find their way off the board as well. Kamari Lassiter going to the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are going to need to figure out a way to clear some cap space. And I think Teron Johnson, unfortunately, because of the savings they can get with a minimal amounts of dead money, will be one of those guys they let go of. So they're going to probably need to replace him in that cornerback room. And then you got Cooper DeJean, who I wrote DB for because he's corner, but he can also be a safety. And I think that could be the role that gets carved out for him for the Seattle Seahawks. But I think his versatility is going to be something that Seattle could really love. I think that, you got Quandre Diggs, Jamal Adams, both of them might be gone at the end of the year. They signed Julian Love, so you can bring in Cooper DeJean and maybe have DeJean and Julian Love being your two safeties. But then when you have that kind of versatility at the safety position, it allows you to move them maybe closer to the offensive line. They can run man coverage against some of the guys at the receiver position. And I think that will be something that Seattle will really find appealing, especially with the way they like to run their defense and the modern day way that they run their defense. Now we're running the next 8 picks, the last 8 picks of the first round. We'll start with the 2 offensive linemen going to 2 really good teams. Troy Fautanu and Armarius Mims. I think they're sort of interchangeable in where they rank in terms of the offensive linemen in this class as tackles. So I got Kansas City going with Fautanu to help improve that tackle spot there. And then Armarius Mims going to the 49ers. I think they'd be very happy to have either one of those guys fall into their lap. Really, even any of the 3 offensive linemen that I have here in this final 8, including Graham Barton, who I have going to the Dallas Cowboys as a guard. I think he can maybe play tackle as well, but I think that this is a perfect opportunity to move Tyler Smith to the permanent left tackle spot. And then Graham Barton slides in there at left guard in Tyler Smith's old spot. I think that is the perfect opportunity for Dallas to have a really smooth transition on their offensive line to, get a little bit younger there. A good run of corners here to Houston, Detroit, and Miami. Kalen King going to the Houston Texans. Pair him up with Derek Stingley, who's having a really good second year. I hope he continues to grow and reach his ceiling. Not everyone can be Sauce Gardner, guys. Terrion Arnold, who's really getting popular. I see him going to the Detroit Lions. They could use some cornerback help as well. They've been okay, but their defense has really been really squishy on the outside and not really that reliable in keeping, scores low. So I think getting some more talent at the defensive back positions, maybe they can bring back CJ Gardner-Johnson as well when he gets healthy. And that can really help them out with the defense and get that offense in a position where then they can be that next step team to get them to be true contenders, which I think they fall just short of as it currently stands. The Miami Dolphins go Quinion Mitchell. I think it's a bit of a reach for him. I could see them trading out of this spot in this scenario. But I do think I'm looking at their roster. I think getting another corner in there could also be advantageous. Is Xavier Howard going to stick around or not? I think there's some up in the air. Even if he does, they could really use a third true corner. I think Quinion Mitchell is going to be one of those guys who, again, feels like a reach here, but I think he's of that group that could find their way into the first round. And I say the same thing about those 2 wide receivers you just see there as well. Xavier Worthy and Brian Thomas Jr. I also throw Adonai Mitchell in there as well as sort of like that third receiver. But I do think you're going to see at least one of those guys find their way into the first round. I think that these last 4 picks are also prime trade-out spots for teams coming up to get that 5th quarterback, because I think the quarterback class is that strong. Perhaps even quarterback 5 and quarterback 6. I think 4 quarterbacks going in the first round is a bare minimum for this draft class, and I think it could get as high as 6. I think Quinn Ewers is sort of the only one of those guys who I consider top-level quarterbacks who won't go. I can guarantee won't go in the first round, but I think he's the guy that'll find himself at the end of the second round, perhaps in the middle to early third round. come day 2. And then I think that's when you'll start to see a bit of a drop off in the quarterback class into that, mid to late day 3 class, where you'll probably see another run of like 2 or 3 quarterbacks go in the class. But this is a perfect opportunity for these teams like the Philadelphia Eagles to add a receiver into this group. They only carried 4 receivers after the 53-man roster. So I think adding another weapon in there, help out Jalen Hurts. Keep investing in Jalen Hurts. It's been working out pretty well for you so far. Keep doing that. And then Baltimore to get Brian Thomas Jr. in there. You're basically sliding him in and sliding out Rashad Bateman. Bateman, you're not going to pick up his 5th year. If you do, you're insane. Sort of let him walk, and then Brian Thomas comes in, fills out a big body wide receiver type for you on the outside to sort of mix in there with Zay Flowers and Odell Beckham, who I'm sure they'll keep around as well. And there you have it. What do you think, Bears fans? Are you satisfied? I know you might probably not like it, but I think that my explanations were pretty good. I think that you got to get some high-level athletes on that team. Now, how about Washington fans? What do you think of being the number 1 pick with Caleb Williams? Denver Bronco fans, what do you think about me deciding to take Michael Penix over Jaden Daniels for you guys? Do you think that would be a good choice? Do you think it's a better fit for Sean Payton's style of offense? Let me know in the comment section below. And we didn't do trade-ups in the first round. We only did the 1 trade. Who do you think is going to be the 5th quarterback off the board in this scenario? And what team do you think would have come up to go and get him? Would it have been the Raiders? Would it have been the Falcons? Would it have been, who could it have been? You guys let me know, and I will see you guys with the next video next time